Angel's Drop wasn't named for its beauty standing at its edge. I felt my son's hands on my back, the same hands I once held as he took his first steps. The wind screamed past my ears, drowning out everything except one thought. How did maternal love turn into this deadly game? Welcome to her Fireside Stories, where tonight's tale will force you to question everything you believe about family bonds. Join us as we unravel the haunting story of Evelyn Grant, a widow who discovered that sometimes the greatest betrayals hide behind the warmest smiles. The choice she faces at Angel's Drop will chill you to the bone. When your own child becomes your executioner, do you choose survival or forgiveness? And when salvation arrives from the most unexpected quarter, can any mother's heart truly heal? Draw closer to the fire, dear listeners. What awaits in the shadows of this cliffside tale might just change how you look at those closest to you. You won't want to miss a single moment of what happens next. Let our story begin. Evelyn Grant rose before dawn as the pine boughs tapped gently on her bedroom window at Silver Ridge. Even at 68, her routine remained steady. She'd stretch her aching joints, sip black coffee by the kitchen window, and watch the sun peek over the distant peaks. The aroma of pine resin wafted through the open window, mingling with the soft hiss of her old coffee percolator. Each new day reminded her of a quiet promise she'd lost her husband Robert a decade ago. And though she missed him fiercely, she still found solace in the rhythms of life here. On this particular morning, a faint unease nagged at her. She thought it might be the leftover sting from a dream in which she relived the day of Robert's passing. As a retired trauma nurse, she'd seen plenty of crises, but nothing compared to the helplessness of watching her own husband collapse from a heart attack on a lonely highway. Evelyn was halfway through her first cup when she heard an engine laboring up her steep gravel driveway. At the side window, she spotted a newer model SUV spitting dust into the morning air. Her German Shepherd mix Scout went on alert, barking at the unexpected visitor. Moments later, her son Lucas stepped out of the vehicle, followed by his wife Harper. Their sudden appearance caught Evelyn off guard. She hadn't seen Lucas in almost a year, and she'd only met Harper a handful of times. They approached with wide smiles, Harper practically glowing as she patted her stomach. "We have news," Harper announced, framing her belly in a way that practically shouted pregnant. The pronouncement brought a complicated swirl of emotions, joy at the notion of a grandchild, but also concern. Why hadn't they called first, inviting them inside? Evelyn tried to quell her curiosity over mugs of freshly brewed coffee. Harper chatted enthusiastically about their baby on the way and their hope to stay in the quiet of the mountains just until they got on their feet. Financial stress, it seemed, weighed heavily on Lucas. He wore guilt like a heavy overcoat, looking everywhere but into his mother's eyes. Whenever money came up, Harper floated the idea that maybe Silver Ridge could serve as a base of operations for them, at least through the pregnancy. Evelyn, torn between caution and maternal duty, agreed to let them stay. After all, Lucas was her son, and the prospect of a grandchild tugged at her heart. That evening, as they settled in, Harper made a point of admiring the house, dropping hints about upgrades for a nursery. Lucas stayed mostly quiet, wincing when Evelyn mentioned his old baseball trophies. Something about Harper's intensity set Evelyn on edge. Later that night, when she overheard Harper on a hushed phone call muttering something about Angel's Drop and a final push, Evelyn felt a chill skitter down her spine. She stood near the closed guest room door, hearing the ominous fragments: insurance, solitude, and accident. The next morning, she stared at the dog tags on her nightstand, still bearing Robert's name. A promise took root inside her. She might be older, but she wasn't helpless. If there was danger afoot, she would face it head on. In the days that followed, Evelyn's suspicions grew. Harper often spoke in riddles about opportunity, and Lucas's agitated state suggested more than ordinary financial troubles. Evelyn found herself slipping into her old nurse's mindset, observing noting changes in behavior, collecting fragments of data. She tried gentle probes at dinner, asking about Lucas's job, about the baby's due date. Harper offered polished, quick responses while Lucas squirmed. Scout, ever sensitive to tension, hovered protectively around Evelyn's feet whenever Harper entered the room. One morning, Evelyn took a pretense of a stroll over to her neighbor, Jack Grizzly Evans's property. Jack was a grizzled 72-year-old retired Marine Scout sniper with a knee that acted up in cold weather. He'd known Robert well, and over the years he'd become something of a father figure to Lucas, at least back when Lucas was younger. Sipping black coffee at Jack's worn kitchen table, Evelyn cautiously confided her uneasy sense that Harper had something planned. She mentioned overhearing references to Angel's Drop, a remote cliff known for its striking views and tragic missteps. The mention of insurance made Jack set his mug down sharply. "Insurance and a cliff are a bad combo," he said, eyes narrowed. Evelyn felt her heart lurch. Hearing him say it out loud confirmed her worst fears. Jack suggested they bring Detective Miriam Barnes into the loop. She was a level-headed investigator in Sierra County, known for her meticulous approach. But Evelyn wasn't quite ready to sound the alarm. Instead, she and Jack worked out a quiet plan. He'd provide her with a satellite phone, pre-programmed with an SOS macro. If Evelyn ever felt truly endangered, she could press a button and alert the authorities, even if cell service vanished. Jack showed her how to stand defensively, balancing her weight. He didn't mince words. "If Harper's planning something, you'll need to stay a step ahead." Evelyn nodded, a knot of anxiety in her chest. Returning home, she found Lucas in the shed, rifling through old gear. His shoulders tensed when he realized she was watching. She tried to coax conversation from him. "Is everything okay? You can tell me if you're in trouble." But his responses were vague. Later that evening, she heard him apologizing under his breath to Scout, who had come limping home with a rope burn around his neck. That horrific sight, her beloved dog injured, sent Evelyn's protective instincts into overdrive. She recalled Harper's cold, calculating face, the hush of her phone calls in the guest room. Whatever Harper was planning, it was real, and it involved harming anything that might stand in her way. Rattled by Scout's injuries, Evelyn decided it was time to gather concrete evidence. With Jack's help, she quietly obtained some suspicious insurance documents that seemed to have her forged signature listing Lucas and Harper as primary beneficiaries. She also started logging dates, times, and snippets of conversations she overheard. More than once, she found Harper in a corner of the house mixing something into water bottles or pressing Lucas with instructions about timing. The word zolpidem floated through the air. Evelyn recognized it immediately, a potent sedative often used for insomnia. If Harper planned to dose her, the danger was higher than ever. Determined to stay alert, Evelyn began simulating the behaviors Harper expected. She feigned mild forgetfulness, stumbled a bit, and left half-finished glasses of water around to let Harper believe the drug was taking effect. Each night she retreated to her room, heart pounding, replaying the day's tense interactions. Part of her wanted to confront Lucas directly, force him to confess or leave, but she sensed that a confrontation could push him deeper into Harper's grasp or prompt Harper to accelerate her plan. So Evelyn waited, wrestling with heartbreak at the thought that her own son could be complicit in a scheme to kill her for money. Meanwhile, Jack fed every scrap of intel to Detective Barnes, who prepped a sting operation. The plan, Jack explained, was for Barnes to place undercover deputies around Angel's Drop if and when Evelyn was lured there. She'd also position herself for a quick response, should the worst occur. The tension of it all weighed on Evelyn. She found herself rummaging through old photo albums late at night, remembering Lucas as a boy, his proud grin when he hit his first home run, the gentle way he once rescued a stray cat. Could that child still exist inside this troubled man? If so, what had driven him to near desperation? Debt, ambition, manipulation by Harper. Her mind spun with questions she couldn't fully answer. Every time she looked at Lucas, she sensed the flicker of guilt behind his eyes, as though he knew precisely how far he'd strayed from who he once was. She prayed that in a moment of crisis, he'd find the moral strength to back out. But the chilling possibility that he might truly help push her over a cliff refused to let her sleep. In the dim light of her bedside lamp, she clutched Robert's dog tags and murmured, "Guide me, love. Help me keep your son safe, even from himself." Finally, the day came when Harper and Lucas made their move. Early one morning, as the sky glowed pale gold, Lucas forced a casual tone. "Mom, why don't we go for a hike, just you and me? We haven't done that in ages." Evelyn felt her stomach twist, but produced a warm smile. "I'd love to," she replied, mindful of the hidden satellite phone in her backpack. Across the kitchen, Harper pretended to nurse a sore ankle, claiming she'd join, but needed to rest. Evelyn bit back the urge to call out the obvious ruse. The ride to Angel's Drop was laden with tension. Lucas drove, knuckles whitening on the wheel, while Evelyn feigned small talk about the baby's nursery. At one point, he handed her a water bottle, presumably dosed. She thanked him, pretended to sip, then discreetly let the liquid dribble onto the truck's floor mat. In the passenger mirror, she caught a glimpse of her own reflection, a weary widow determined to survive. She remembered Jack's final words that morning, "We'll be there. Don't lose faith." They parked at the trailhead. Two undercover deputies dressed as park rangers hovered by a ranger truck, greeting them with a friendly wave. Evelyn returned the wave, taking care not to appear too relieved. The ascent began. The first part of the trail was mild, weaving through tall pines that rustled in a light breeze. Lucas fell silent occasionally, trying to guide Evelyn into sipping more water. She expertly faked drowsiness but remained sharp. As they climbed higher, the trees thinned. Through breaks in the canopy, Evelyn spotted a lone figure on a rocky outcrop, Jack scanning the valley with his monocular. Her heart clenched. "He's there," she thought, keeping watch. At one point, Lucas hesitated, his breathing ragged. She touched his arm gently, daring to ask, "Lucas, are you okay?" He gave a barely perceptible nod, but his eyes told a different story. A tempest of fear, guilt, and love colliding all at once. Just past a bend, they encountered Harper, who feigned a twisted ankle. Evelyn took a deep breath. So that was her strategy: show up at the last minute to ensure the plan was executed. Harper whined about the uneven trail, leaning on Lucas. Then, with a thin smile, she invited Evelyn to stand near the cliff's edge, wanting help with her footing. This was the final setup. The wind roared up from the canyon below. Pebbles skittered over the rim, vanishing into the abyss. Evelyn steeled herself, feeling her heart thud so loudly she wondered if Lucas could hear it. At the lip of Angel's Drop, the world opened into a vast panorama of pine-studded ridges and swirling clouds. But the beauty was overshadowed by the quiet dread in Evelyn's chest. Harper placed a hand on Lucas's back, whispering something to him that Evelyn couldn't fully catch. Then Lucas reached for Evelyn's elbow, guiding her closer to the precipice. She leaned on her trekking pole, feigning the effect of sedatives. Her breath hitched. She imagined Robert's voice telling her to stand firm. The moment stretched taut as a wire. Lucas pressed forward, but the push lacked conviction. His eyes darted from the dizzying drop to Harper's glare. Harper, impatient, shoved him from behind. He stumbled into Evelyn, nearly sending both of them teetering off the edge. Evelyn gasped, arms flailing to maintain balance, while her mind reeled at how close she'd come to plummeting. Then came a sudden eruption of sound. Scout's barking out of nowhere. Scout barreled up the trail, ignoring the pain in his neck and leg. He lunged at Harper, teeth sinking into her jacket sleeve, and yanked her backward. Harper shrieked, swiping at him with her free hand. She kicked wildly, trying to dislodge the dog. The next instant, a deputy's camera flashed from behind a nearby boulder, capturing the scene. Harper, now furious and cornered, spat vile threats. Lucas stood, trembling, tears in his eyes as he watched Scout's intervention derail their plan. Evelyn used that split second to step away from the cliff, her grip on the pole steady. She spotted Jack high above on a ridge, rifle in hand, scanning the scene. Another deputy closed in, calling out, "Police, don't move!" The wind whipped across the ledge, swirling dust around them. Harper tried to kick Scout again, but an echoing crack from Jack's rifle launched a beanbag that struck her shoulder, spinning her off balance. Sobbing, Lucas collapsed to his knees as Harper cursed them all, screaming that Lucas was a coward, that he'd ruined everything. Evelyn, her heart hammering, approached her son. The deputy disarmed Harper, yanking the half-empty pill bottle from her jacket. "Ma'am, is this the sedative you used?" he demanded. Harper only hissed at him. Meanwhile, Evelyn knelt beside Lucas. "I forgave the debts," she whispered, her voice trembling, "but can you forgive yourself?" Detective Miriam Barnes arrived soon after, making her way carefully along the rocky path. Lean and focused, she offered curt nods to the deputies who had Harper pinned against a pine trunk, cuffing her wrists. Harper spat accusations, claiming entrapment, yelling that Lucas was the real villain, then reversing course, hurling vile insults at Evelyn Barnes, ignored the tirade. With practiced calm, she turned to Lucas, still on his knees, head bowed. "Lucas Grant, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder," she said, reading him his rights. Lucas's shoulders shook as he buried his face in his hands. "I couldn't do it," he mumbled between sobs. "I almost, but I couldn't." The wind carried his words toward the canyon's emptiness. Looking up, he saw the silhouette of Jack descending the ridge, rifle slung over one shoulder. The older man wore a grim expression, as though balancing relief that Evelyn was safe with the sadness of seeing Lucas in chains. Nearby, Harper kept raging alternately, blaming Lucas and calling the cops incompetent. One deputy searched her backpack and found evidence of forgeries, plus a phone loaded with voice recordings. Another snapped plastic zip ties around Lucas's wrist more gently than with Harper. Evelyn felt a swirl of emotions, anger, heartbreak, even pity. This was her son, after all, the boy who once collected rocks by the creek and gave them to her as treasures. She rose to her feet, shakily noticing Scout standing guard near her ears, flattened. "Good boy," she murmured, stroking his fur. Tears pricked her eyes. He had saved her, risking his own life despite his injuries. Barnes beckoned Evelyn aside, asking for a brief statement. Evelyn explained everything, overhearing Harper discuss Angel's drop, suspecting sedation, forging insurance documents. She handed over the flash drive Jack had compiled. Barnes nodded, face grim. "It's enough to charge both of them," she said. "We'll handle the rest at the station." Somewhere below, the canyon wind howled, as though lamenting the cruelty that had nearly unfolded here. Evelyn glanced around, noticing the empty water bottle where Lucas had tried to drug her. She shivered, imagining what might have happened had she truly been sedated. Then she let out a trembling breath, shoulders sagging. "We made it," she told herself. The climb down was a surreal reversal of what might have been a one-way trip. Deputies led Harper first, while another guided Lucas, who had gone strangely quiet, like a man in shock. Jack walked with Evelyn occasionally, offering an arm whenever the trail got tricky. Scout limped along, refusing to leave Evelyn's side. By the time they reached the parking area, the sun was drifting westward, painting the sky in shades of peach and violet. Harper was shoved unceremoniously into one police SUV, still spewing venomous threats. Lucas went into another. Before the door shut, he met Evelyn's gaze one last time, shame etched in every line of his face. Detective Barnes approached Evelyn, resting a hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing," she said, voice low. "This wasn't your fault. Remember that?" Evelyn nodded, hugging herself. The swirl of sirens and radio chatter was disorienting. She felt no triumph, only a profound sadness that it had come to this. Yet she couldn't ignore the surge of relief in her chest. She was alive, Scout was alive, and Harper's plan was thwarted. Jack offered to drive Evelyn home, helping her into his worn pickup. As they pulled away from the trailhead, a single hawk circled overhead, gliding on the thermals that rose from the canyon. Evelyn watched it until it vanished against the setting sun, a symbol of freedom she almost hadn't lived to see. In the passenger seat, Scout nuzzled against her, letting out a soft whine. "It's okay, boy," she whispered. "We'll be all right." They didn't talk much on the way back. Jack let the radio mumble quietly, scanning for any fresh updates from Barnes. In the twilight, Evelyn caught sight of the lights flickering on at Silver Ridge. She yearned for the familiar comfort of her armchair, the solidity of her home. As Jack parked, he turned to her and said, "You stood strong. Robert would be proud." Evelyn's throat tightened. She nodded, stepping out into the crisp evening air that night as she locked her doors and turned out the lights. She held Robert's dog tags a moment longer than usual, replaying the day's events in her mind. "I survived thanks to everyone who rallied around me." Yet a deep sadness lingered. Lucas's future now hung in the balance, and she wasn't sure if she'd ever fully forgive him or if he could forgive himself. Weeks later, Evelyn received a summons to speak with Detective Barnes. The official charges had been filed: attempted murder and insurance fraud against Harper, conspiracy charges against Lucas. Although there was overwhelming evidence, phone calls, the pill bottle, text messages, Evelyn still felt uneasy. She blamed herself in part for not seeing the depths of Lucas's financial distress sooner, or for not stepping in to help him untangle from Harper's influence. Should a mother have known, she wondered? Her psyche churned with guilt and sorrow. She found the Sierra County station stark, but orderly. Barnes greeted her, inviting her into a modest office lined with case files. "We're almost done preparing for the hearing," Barnes said, "but we need a few clarifications." She gently guided Evelyn through a list of questions about the forgeries, Harper's movements, and any direct threats Evelyn recalled. Each answer felt like peeling off a bandage, exposing fresh wounds. When they got to the part about Lucas's involvement, Evelyn's eyes stung. She recounted how he'd tried to push her, but faltered in the final moment, how guilt had contorted his face. "He's not blameless," she admitted, voice trembling, but there was hesitation. I saw it in him." Barnes nodded carefully, noting everything. After the interview, Barnes insisted on walking Evelyn out, a small gesture of empathy. As they parted ways, the detective mentioned Lucas's cooperation, turning over voice memos and text exchanges that incriminated Harper heavily. "He might get a reduced sentence," she said. Evelyn's heart clenched at the thought of her son's future. Her maternal instinct warred with her sense of justice. Harper had orchestrated every detail, but Lucas had still gone along up to that final second on the cliff. "He's an adult," she reminded herself. "Adults bear responsibility for their choices." Outside, the sky lay shrouded in gray clouds, hinting at rain. Evelyn drove home, mind drifting through memories of Lucas as a child, how he once cried for hours over a baby bird he'd found injured, how he refused to let them euthanize it without trying everything they could. That boy was nowhere to be seen at Angel's Drop. Or maybe he was glimpsed in the tears that slid down Lucas's face as he realized he couldn't kill his own mother. Evelyn had never felt so torn, longing for a time machine to rewrite the past. Back at Silver Ridge, she made herself a cup of tea and paused by the window, stroking Scout's ears. Storms coming, she thought, watching the clouds gather. But for now, she cherished the quiet, a fleeting calm before the legal battles commenced. It didn't take long for the sensational headlines to appear in local news. "Mother survives alleged cliff plot insurance scam gone wrong at Angel's Drop." Reporters called seeking interviews that Evelyn politely declined. The phone never stopped ringing. Concerned neighbors, old friends from her nursing days, even distant relatives who'd read about the case online. Evelyn navigated each conversation with measured composure, politely stating she trusted the justice system to handle things. Meanwhile, life around Silver Ridge continued in subdued fashion. Jack checked in often, bringing groceries, or simply offering a strong shoulder to lean on. He'd once lost a comrade in Vietnam under suspicious circumstances, which left him keenly aware of betrayal's sting. Over coffee, he'd share stories about moral dilemmas in war zones, drawing a quiet parallel to Lucas's predicament. Sometimes Jack reflected people do the wrong thing for reasons they think are right. Doesn't excuse it, but maybe it explains it. Evelyn understood but still wrestled with a mother's heartbreak. Scout's presence was a balm. The dog followed her everywhere, tail wagging in quiet devotion. His neck wound healed into a permanent scar, a small circle of missing fur that reminded her daily of the narrow line between safety and danger. One day, while tidying up, she found herself holding an old baseball from Lucas's teenage years. An image flashed Lucas hitting a winning home run, while Robert cheered so loudly the entire stadium turned. Tears welled up. She carried the baseball to a dusty box of family mementos, whispering, "Where did we go wrong?" The pretrial hearing soon arrived, requiring Evelyn to testify briefly. The courthouse in Sierra County was modest, polished floors, fluorescent lights, and the faint smell of old paperwork. She saw Harper, hair unkempt, dressed in a wrinkled orange jumpsuit, glowering at her from the defense table. Lucas sat at another table flanked by a separate attorney. He avoided eye contact, hands trembling. The judge listened to Detective Barnes summarize the evidence. Harper's attorney argued there was no actual harm done, labeling it a plan that never came to fruition. But a plan was enough for attempted murder charges, and the judge refused to reduce bail. Afterward, Evelyn slipped out a side door, not wanting to face reporters. Outside, the air felt too bright, the sun glaring off parked cars. Her insides churned. She had spoken the truth, and it had put her own son in jeopardy. Yet perhaps ironically, it might also set him on the path to redemption, acknowledging guilt, facing consequences, and rebuilding from scratch. God willing, she thought this heartbreak will lead us both somewhere better than that cliff's edge. Time seemed to blur in the lead up to Harper's and Lucas's formal trial. Evelyn caught glimpses of them only in the courtroom or in the fleeting news clips that circulated. Whenever she saw Lucas on screen, shoulders hunched, hair grown out, she felt a pang of regret. Harper, on the other hand, remained stoic, sometimes smirking for cameras in a way that made Evelyn's skin crawl. In between court dates, Detective Barnes and the prosecution team visited Silver Ridge to walk through the details once more. They toured the guest room where Harper had made those phone calls, the kitchen where she likely slipped sedatives into Evelyn's drinks. At one point, Barnes led them all to the property's edge, where the steep terrain hinted at how easy it would be to stage an accident if no one was watching. Evelyn watched the attorneys take notes, their faces reflecting grim understanding. The entire ordeal felt surreal, as though she was watching a drama from the outside rather than living it. One afternoon, as Evelyn folded laundry, the phone rang. She picked it up to hear a timid greeting. Mom. Her heart lurched, Lucas. She took a long moment to find her voice. Yes, she managed. He explained he'd been allowed limited calls from the facility where he was undergoing psychological evaluations and awaiting sentencing. I'm so sorry, he said, words trembling. I keep replaying that moment on the cliff. I can't believe I went that far. I can't sleep. Evelyn held the receiver tightly, tears pricking her eyes. She wanted to scold him, to hold him, to ask 1,000 questions, but all she could say was, Lucas, you have to face the consequences. Her voice caught. I'm glad you didn't go through with it. They spoke for 5 minutes, the maximum allowed. Lucas admitted to forging some signatures at Harper's insistence, deep in debt from failed business ventures. I didn't see another way out, he confessed, but I'm trying to come to terms with it now. When the line disconnected, Evelyn sank into a chair, overcome by grief, mixed with cautious hope. At least he was acknowledging responsibility. Maybe that was a seed that could grow into something better. Wiping her tears, she made a silent promise. If Lucas showed genuine remorse and worked to rebuild, she'd be there for him. Yet she couldn't simply forget he nearly let Harper push her off a cliff. Trust would be the hardest bridge to rebuild. When the full trial date arrived, the courthouse buzzed with tension. Locals, curious onlookers, and a scattering of reporters filled the seats. Evelyn took her place quietly, clasping Robert's dog tags beneath her blouse as a talisman of strength. The prosecution outlined a disturbing portrait, Harper meticulously planning Evelyn's death to collect insurance. Lucas complicit but showing signs of internal conflict. Evidence included phone recordings, Harper telling Lucas how to drug Evelyn, the forgeries in the insurance paperwork, and text messages referencing the best time to force an accident at Angel's Drop. Evelyn was called to testify about how she overheard Harper's midnight phone call, how Scout had gone missing only to return injured, and the suspicious talk of Angel's Drop is deserted on weekdays. She described the moment Lucas handed her drugged water, her feigned wooziness, and the final confrontation at the cliff. Her voice trembled, especially when recounting how close she was to toppling over the precipice. The defense team tried to rattle her, suggesting she misinterpreted events, but the more they pressed, the clearer it became that their version of events made little sense without acknowledging a sinister plot. When it was Lucas's turn to speak, the entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. He appeared pallid, shoulders sagging in a cheap suit. Taking the stand, he admitted to his involvement, forging documents agreeing to coax his mother to Angel's Drop, preparing the sedatives. He also explained how Harper's unrelenting push led him to a point of moral breakdown. "I knew it was wrong," he said, voice shaky. "I tried to tell her we could find another way." But she insisted. Tears trickled down his cheeks as he recalled Scout's sudden appearance. "In that moment, I felt relieved the dog stopped us. I couldn't do it." Harper, sitting a few feet away, glowered at Lucas as though he were a traitor. Her lawyer tried to object, but the judge allowed Lucas to continue. He spoke of desperation, mounting debts, fear of losing everything. He claimed Harper painted an alluring picture of a clean break and easy inheritance. Though it didn't excuse his actions, it painted him less as a mastermind and more as a man manipulated by fear. When he finished, the courtroom buzzed with hushed whispers. Evelyn clutched her hands together, heartbreak carving deep lines into her features. By the trial's end, the verdict came swiftly. The jury found Harper guilty of attempted murder and fraud. The judge wasted little time handing down a harsh sentence, 20 years in a state prison. Harper's mask of control cracked the moment handcuffs snapped around her wrists. She screamed profanities, calling the entire proceeding a setup, but her voice was drowned out by the bailiff's firm commands. Lucas's sentencing took a separate track. After a wrenching statement of remorse and evidence of his cooperation, the judge offered a blended outcome, 5 years suspended with strict probation, combined with a mandatory 2,000 hours of community service in an EMT training program. The judge explained that while Lucas's complicity was serious, his last-minute hesitation and subsequent honesty warranted a chance at rehabilitation. Shock rippled through the courtroom. Some felt it was too lenient, others that it was fair. Evelyn stood off to the side, tears brimming. Part of her felt relief he wouldn't spend decades behind bars. Part of her still seethed at his betrayal. After the gavel struck the court, adjourned, Harper was led away, first shackled and furious. Her future sealed by the same evidence she'd generated to plan Evelyn's demise. Lucas turned to look at his mother, guilt etched into every corner of his face. Evelyn wavered, wrestling with a surge of conflicting emotions. She approached him slowly, placing a trembling hand on his shoulder. "I can't pretend this never happened," she whispered, "but I want you to find a better path." Lucas nodded, voice choked with shame. I swear I will. Mom. Then the bailiff escorted him away, leaving Evelyn alone in the echoing corridors of justice. Detective Barnes caught up to her, offering a quiet nod. Justice was served, albeit painfully, she said, Evelyn hugging herself, gazed at the emptying courtroom. I just hope this leads to some sort of healing, she replied. Outside, cameras flashed, but Evelyn sidestepped the media, finding Jack waiting by his old truck. He didn't need words. One look at her face, and he gave her a gentle embrace. She sank into it, grateful for his unwavering support in a nightmare she'd never imagined. Life after the trial felt like a strange twilight. Harper was locked away and Lucas was placed in a supervised probation program that included mandatory counseling and on-the-job EMT training. Evelyn returned to the quiet rhythms of Silver Ridge, taking it one day at a time. Each morning she walked Scout along the winding trails, marveling at how quickly the seasons shifted. The pine-scented air filled her lungs, reminding her she'd nearly lost everything in these woods, but had somehow survived. Some weeks later, a letter arrived, Lucas's handwriting. Inside, he laid bare his feelings of guilt, describing nightmares, where he teetered at the cliff's edge, forced to make the terrible choice again. He wrote about wanting to atone, about learning basic medical care in the training program, about feeling a flicker of hope each time he managed to help someone in crisis. I'm learning what it means to care for others, Mom, he wrote, in the smallest ways. It's like I'm undoing what I did to you. Evelyn read the letter under a patch of sunlight by the living room window. Tears splashed onto the paper. She wasn't sure how to respond, so she left it unanswered for a week. Eventually, she gathered the courage to write back. I can't ignore the hurt you caused, but if you're sincere in changing, I'm willing to see where it leads. Your father would have wanted you to do good in this world. Don't waste another chance. It wasn't forgiveness, she couldn't claim that yet, but it was a beginning. More letters followed. Lucas detailed how paramedic training introduced him to real emergencies, car accidents, heart attacks, strokes. He wrote that each saved life felt like a small redemption. Evelyn, for her part, wrote back more often now, sharing bits of her days, how Scout had grown bolder again, chasing squirrels near the fence, how she'd started reorganizing Robert's old Army medals to pass the time. They tiptoed toward rebuilding trust, their words bridging the wide chasm that Harper's scheme had carved. Occasionally, Evelyn wondered if Harper tried to reach Lucas from prison, or if she harbored any remorse. The newspaper mentioned Harper filed an appeal, but no further news emerged. Evelyn focused instead on the letters with Lucas, each one a step away from that moment on the cliff's edge. Sometimes at night she still jolted awake, heart pounding from a nightmare of falling into oblivion. Then she'd feel Scout's warmth at her side and take solace. They were safe, and hope hadn't died. Spring arrived, painting the mountains in lush greens and scattering wildflowers along the trails. On a mild afternoon, Jack invited Evelyn to a small community gathering where he planned to teach basic self-defense techniques to fellow seniors. Never hurts to be prepared, he joked, though they both knew the seriousness underlying that advice. Evelyn agreed, bringing along Scout, who relished any chance to be outdoors. A handful of older residents gathered near Alpine Lake, a serene spot ringed by towering pines and granite boulders. Jack demonstrated simple stances, how to pivot, where to aim, a well-placed elbow strike. Evelyn watched with a mix of pride and gratitude, recalling how Jack's vigilance and beanbag rifle shot had helped subdue Harper on that fateful day. Scout, tail wagging, roamed freely, sniffing around the lake shore. The tranquil waters reflected the late afternoon sun, turning the surface gold. Midway through the session, Jack spotted Evelyn leaning on her trekking pole and motioned her over. You want to show them how it's done? He teased. She managed a wry smile and stepped forward, demonstrating the balanced stance she'd practiced with him months ago. The group applauded politely, though they also shared knowing looks. Her narrow escape from murder was hardly a secret in these parts. Despite the gentle ribbing, Evelyn sensed real compassion from them. After the informal lesson, she wandered to the water's edge, letting her mind drift. She thought of Lucas's next letter still unread in her mailbox at home. He'd written that he might finish his community service early, that he wanted to come see her. Anxiety and longing mingled in her chest. Perhaps it was time. Perhaps the risk of heartbreak was worth the chance at real reconciliation. Scout barked, chasing after a thrown stick, and Evelyn couldn't help but smile. Then her gaze traveled to the distant ridges where Angel's Drop caught the evening light. The memory of standing on that precipice, heartbreak overshadowing fear, flickered through her mind. I survived, she whispered to herself, voice lost in the whisper of the wind, and I can keep surviving. In that moment, she realized how precious life was, how quickly it could be taken away, and how determined she was not to waste what remained. The day Lucas completed his probationary EMT training, he asked permission to visit Silver Ridge. The arrangement required a parole officer's approval, but eventually it was granted under certain conditions. He had to maintain regular check-ins and stay out of further debt trouble. Evelyn agreed with cautious optimism. She prepared the guest room, though she doubted either of them would feel entirely comfortable at first. The last time Lucas had stayed there, he'd been conspiring to end her life. The morning he arrived, the sun painted the peaks in a gentle glow, but Evelyn's nerves simmered. She paced the porch, Scout at her side as she heard a car rumble up the driveway. When Lucas stepped out, she almost didn't recognize him. He looked leaner, more worn. The old arrogance that Harper had kindled in him was gone, replaced by an air of humility. They stood there awkwardly for a moment, mother and son each uncertain how to bridge a rift that had nearly claimed a life. Eventually, Evelyn broke the silence with a trembling smile. "Hello, Lucas." He swallowed hard. "Mom," he said softly. There was no need to rehash the past in that moment. She gestured for him to come in and he nodded, hefting a small duffel bag. Inside, he rubbed Scout's ears, murmuring an apology to the dog, as if revisiting the memory of how Harper had tried to eliminate Scout from the equation. The dog's wagging tail signaled unconditional forgiveness. Over a modest lunch of soup and sandwiches, they spoke in halting sentences about the basics. Lucas's EMT shifts, whether he'd like to continue in medical services, how the house had changed. Little. He confessed he still had nightmares of the cliff and found therapy sessions both daunting and helpful. Evelyn listened intently occasionally, reminding herself to breathe and not let bitterness consume her. She found small comfort in glimpsing the caring boy she once knew, especially when he recounted saving an elderly woman's life with CPR. "I kept thinking about you, about how you were a nurse," he admitted, voice shaky. That evening, they sat on the porch, neither rushing the conversation. As dusk settled, painting the sky in pink and lavender streaks, Lucas finally mustered the courage to address the darkest moment. "I can't believe I almost," he whispered, voice trailing off. Evelyn clasped her hands, tears glimmering in her eyes. "We'll never forget it," she said gently. "But we can try to move forward, one step at a time." His silent nod carried a weight of remorse and fragile hope. A new chapter began at Silver Ridge, tentative, fragile, but undeniably present. Lucas spent 2 weeks under Evelyn's roof helping with chores and shadowing a local ambulance team for more volunteer experience. Despite the tension that sometimes lingered, small moments of genuine connection surfaced. Lucas mending the squeaky porch step, Evelyn guiding him through a first aid refresher, both of them remembering Robert's quirks with sad smiles. One afternoon, while sorting through an old trunk, they found a series of Robert's photographs from his Army years. In one snapshot, a much younger Evelyn stood by Robert's side, wearing her nurse's scrubs. Lucas studied the photo in silence, tears welling up. "Dad would hate what I did," he said, voice shaking. Evelyn placed a hand on his shoulder. He'd also be proud. You're trying to fix it now. For the first time, Lucas looked at her with a kind of raw gratitude. Occasionally, Jack stopped by with Scout trotting behind him, offering fatherly banter to Lucas and coffee for Evelyn. Jack's gruff humor lightened the air. Heard you pulled a double shift on the ambulance. That's real work, he teased Lucas, who only smiled sheepishly. Evelyn couldn't help noticing how life felt more normal whenever Jack was around, like an anchor. Once Jack left, though, the house felt eerily quiet, as if memories of betrayal echoed in the corners. Meanwhile, Harper remained in prison out of sight, but not entirely out of mind. There were rumors she was appealing her sentence, but nothing concrete. On a day when Lucas was particularly tense, he admitted he sometimes felt guilty for testifying against Harper. I loved her, or I thought I did. He confessed, eyes downcast. But maybe I just needed to believe she could solve my problems. Evelyn listened, empathizing with how illusions can crumble under reality's harsh spotlight. She said simply, "Some loves are toxic. It's good you broke free." Each evening, Lucas meticulously updated a journal as part of his court-ordered therapy writing about moral responsibilities, personal failures, and hopes for redemption. Though Evelyn never asked to read it, she gleaned from his calmer demeanor that he was making progress. The story of a possible fatherhood. Harper had claimed to be pregnant remained unresolved, though word reached him that she'd never been truly pregnant, merely using the ruse to lure Evelyn into pity. That revelation hit Lucas hard, leaving him reeling with betrayal. Yet in a strange way, it also liberated him from the final shreds of Harper's hold. Evelyn sensed that Lucas's departure back to his mandated living arrangement would be bittersweet. On his final morning at Silver Ridge, they had breakfast on the porch, the aroma of fresh biscuits lingering in the cool mountain air. Scout dozed at their feet as though guarding these last hours of fragile peace. Lucas hesitated before speaking. I don't know if it's okay to say this, but thank you for letting me come back here. Evelyn folded her hands. You're my son, she said softly. I can't erase what happened, but I don't want to lose you forever. He nodded, tears gathering. I've got to keep learning, keep proving. I can be decent. She thought of the unconditional love parents often hold on to, even in the face of betrayal, and felt the stirrings of a guarded hope. They embraced briefly, both of them stiffer with emotion than they once might have been. An uneasy acceptance passed between them, love tangled with regret, but love nonetheless. He packed his things into the car, pausing to kneel beside Scout and rub the dog's ears. Thanks for saving Mom, he whispered, tears slipping from his eyes. Then he drove away, the gravel road swirling dust in his wake. For a long moment, Evelyn stood on the porch, heart aching but strangely lighter. Whatever the future held, at least the lines of communication remained open. In the days that followed, letters and phone calls replaced face-to-face conversations. Lucas reported back on his progress, how the community had accepted him more than he deserved, how he sometimes felt unworthy but was trying to earn their trust. Evelyn wrote encouraging notes, sharing small vignettes of life at Silver Ridge, Jack's knee troubles, the new wildflowers blooming near Angel's Drop. How she'd mustered the courage to visit that cliff again, just to face her lingering fear. Late one night, she ventured to that precipice alone, wearing Robert's dog tags beneath a warm jacket. The wind buffeted her, but she stayed a safe distance from the edge. Staring at the vast canyon, she closed her eyes and offered a silent thanks for her survival. She let the memory of Lucas's near betrayal wash over her, acknowledging the sorrow it sparked. Yet in that same moment, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for Scout's fierce devotion, for Jack's unwavering friendship, for Detective Barnes's thoroughness, and for her own enduring will to live. 2 years later, silver gray clouds drifted across the sky as Evelyn strolled along the bank of Alpine Lake, Scout trotting beside her. The German Shepherd mix had long since recovered from his injuries, retaining only a faint scar as a reminder of that dark chapter. Across a small clearing, Jack stood giving a refresher self-defense demonstration to seniors, an informal continuation of what he'd begun before Detective Barnes even showed up sometimes to offer safety tips. The mood was light communal, a testament to how tragedy can bring people together in subtle ways. Evelyn found a sturdy rock to sit on, gazing at her reflection in the calm waters. The breeze carried the scent of pine and damp earth, reminding her of the cyclical nature of seasons. She thought back to her earliest days here with Robert, how they'd picked this spot for its healing quiet after their many years of service. He in the Army, she as a trauma nurse. Then she remembered Lucas's letters, describing how he'd just completed an advanced EMT course, how he felt compelled to keep atoning. He wrote of one day working toward being a fully certified paramedic or maybe even a nurse like his mother. A fluttering sound drew her attention to the pines above, where a hawk soared effortlessly. She traced its path for a moment, then sighed softly. Jack had come over, resting on his cane. "How are you holding up?" he asked. Evelyn gave a small smile. "Better every day," she replied. "I'm thinking of inviting Lucas for a visit soon. I want to see what direction his life is taking." Jack squeezed her shoulder gently. "You've both come a long way. Don't be afraid to keep climbing." She nodded, feeling a quiet optimism. The pain of betrayal hadn't vanished, but it had softened, leaving room for the possibility of genuine reconciliation. She believed Robert would have wanted that. As the sun dipped lower, the lake's surface turned golden, reflecting the ridges that framed the horizon. Far in the distance lay Angel's Drop, no longer a place of impending doom, but a reminder of how precarious and precious life can be. Evelyn rose to her feet, trekking pole in hand, stepping toward the water's edge, where Scout waited, wagging his tail. She whispered one final thought, a vow that encapsulated everything she'd endured. Forgiveness is a summit steep, but the view is worth the climb. Then, with a deep breath, she joined the small group of neighbors, ready to embrace the sunset and whatever tomorrow held. Soft, crackling fire. As the last embers of Evelyn's tale flicker before us, I find myself wondering, what weighs more in a mother's heart, the lifetime of love she's given, or the single moment of betrayal that threatened to end it all? Tonight, we stood with Evelyn at Angel's Drop, where the thin line between maternal love and survival blurred in the mountain wind. Her story teaches us that sometimes the bravest act isn't forgiving others, it's protecting the light within ourselves. You've been sharing your thoughts in the comments, and I'm touched by how deeply this story has moved you. Some of you see Lucas as irredeemable, while others believe in the power of redemption. Perhaps that's the most haunting aspect of Evelyn's tale, how it forces us to question our own capacity for forgiveness. Next week, we'll venture into the shadows of an old Victorian mansion where a grandmother's secret diary reveals a betrayal that echoes through 3 generations. The twist at its heart might change everything you believe about family loyalty. If Evelyn's journey resonated with you, become part of our storytelling family by subscribing. Every week, we gather here by the fireside to explore the depths of human nature, one tale at a time. Before we part, I leave you with Evelyn's own words. Sometimes love means knowing when to let go, and sometimes strength means knowing when to hold on. Until our paths cross again in the warm glow of next week's fire, remember the strongest hearts are often forged in the flames of adversity. This is her Fireside Stories, where every tale leaves an ember in your soul.